The girl I always protected was being blackmailed by our janitor, so I coordinated a sting with hidden mics, camera footage, and backup from a few brave students, and together we brought down a man who'd been preying on girls for years without getting caught. Back in high school, there was this janitor who everyone loved, and his name was Alex. He was the kind of guy who knew every kid's name, gave fist bumps in the hallway, and fixed more broken hearts than lockers. One time, there was this skinny girl who used to come into school once a week, sit alone in the canteen without any food, and not talk to anyone. Everyone ignored her. But Alex? He saw her. I noticed he'd meet up with her after school, always in the janitor's closet. At first, I thought it was just random. Maybe she needed help with something. But it kept happening. Week after week. Same time, same place. Curiosity ate at me. So one day, when the corridors were empty, I took a peep through the window. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what I expected to see. Something shady, maybe. Something awful. But what I saw made my eyes literally pop out of my head. He was handing her boxes of sandwiches, enough to last dozens of meals. I had to stop myself from running in there and giving Alex a big hug. When she turned toward the door, I panicked and ran. This was in the 9th grade. I fully believed since that day they were best friends, but then by 11th grade, everything changed. Everyone had found out about Alex's closet meetups with the girl. At first, people started spreading rumors that he was a creep, and the strange part was that the girl he helped claimed he was creepy too. But the strangest part? Alex admitted to being a creep and said these rumors were true. This spread like wildfire. So much so that the principal got involved, and he was going to call her mother to see what the deal was. But he couldn't, because her mother was a known psychopath who mistreated her at home, meaning if he did call home, the girl's life would be put on the line for allowing herself to be taken advantage of. And so, Alex agreed to take the brunt of these rumors, just so the girl's mother wouldn't get involved. This wasn't known information, but I knew all this because the girl actually became my friend. We can call her Sally. After that, I don't know how the janitor managed to keep his job, but he did, and the rumor had its consequences. Soon, the entire school was bullying Alex. They'd constantly break his equipment, which he had to pay to replace, and one guy even peed into his mop bucket when he wasn't looking. I wanted to tell everyone the truth, to defend him. But there was one thing stopping me. You see, Sally's home life was actually a lot worse than I thought, complete with discipline, substance use, neglect, her mom bringing new guys home every weekend, the works. I did think about calling CPS, but Sally told me not to bother, because they had already done multiple house visits, but didn't do anything about it. And this was exactly why I refused to defend Alex. You see, in the midst of all this, Alex did a complete 180. One day, he asked Sally to meet him in the janitor's closet. We thought he wanted to discuss the situation or something, maybe offer an alternative. But no. Instead, he blackmailed her. He told her that if she didn't start repaying him for what he'd done for her, he'd tell her mom that she had told him to give her sandwiches and extra food, that she forced him into treating her injuries. And because Sally's mom was off the rocker, this was a serious threat. At that moment, Sally knew she had no way out, so she agreed. That day in the janitor's closet, he stole her innocence. He told her he had every intention of doing it again whenever the urge came up, that he'd been waiting for this moment ever since that day in 9th grade, when she was sitting all by herself. I saw her lip quiver when she told me this, and I let her break down into my arms. But as I softly stroked her hair and caressed her face, a storm was brewing inside me. I had every intention of ruining that man's life, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and I would stop at nothing to get my revenge and make Alex pay. By morning, I had approximately 0 good ideas. This wasn't like the movies where some teenager magically outsmarted the bad guy. This was real life, with real consequences. The next day at school, I couldn't focus on anything. My chemistry teacher asked me a question, and I just stared blankly until she moved on to someone else. During lunch, I watched Richard mopping the hallway like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just revealed himself to be a monster. I wanted to walk up and punch him in the face, but that wouldn't solve anything. "You look like trash," Sally said, sitting next to me in the cafeteria. She tried to smile, but I could tell she hadn't slept either. "Thanks. You really know how to make a guy feel special," I replied, pushing my untouched lunch toward her. We sat in silence for a while before Sally spoke again. "He wants to meet today after 7th period." My stomach dropped. "You can't go. If I don't, he'll tell my mom everything," she whispered. "I can't risk that." That's when the first part of a plan started forming. Not a good plan. Definitely not a smart plan. But it was something. What if we record him? Get evidence? Sally shook her head immediately. "My phone's broken, remember? Mom threw it against the wall last month." "Right. I'd forgotten about that." "Use mine," I said, pulling out my Nokia brick. It wasn't fancy, but it had a voice recorder function. "Hide it in your pocket. If he says anything inappropriate or threatens you again, we'll have proof." She looked doubtful. And then what? That was the problem. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Then, we figure out the next step. Sally reluctantly took my phone, and I showed her how to start the recorder. The plan was for her to meet Richard, record whatever happened, and then we'd meet up at the park a few blocks from school afterward. I spent the rest of the day barely breathing, watching the clock tick painfully slowly toward 7th period. When the final bell rang, I headed straight to the park and waited, and waited, and waited some more. After an hour, I started to panic. What if something had gone wrong? What if Richard had found the phone? What if he'd hurt her? Just as I was about to run back to school, Sally appeared, walking quickly toward me. She looked shaken but unhurt. Without saying anything, she handed me my phone. "Did you get it?" I asked. She nodded. "He didn't touch me today, just talked. Made it clear what he expects next time." I played the recording. Richard's voice came through clearly, talking about how Sally owed him, and how he'd been patient enough. He laid out exactly what he wanted from her in disturbing detail, and repeatedly threatened to tell her mother everything if she didn't comply. It was sickening, but it was evidence. "So now what?" Sally asked, her voice small. That was still the big question. We couldn't go to the principal. That sleazeball would probably just sweep it under the rug. The police might not take it seriously either, especially with just an audio recording as evidence. Plus, involving authorities might mean Sally's home situation would come to light, potentially making everything worse for her. We need more, I finally said. One recording might not be enough. Over the next week, Sally met with Richard 3 more times. Each time she recorded their conversations. Each time his demands got more explicit and his threats more severe. And each time she managed to make excuses to delay the payment he was demanding. I don't know how she found the strength to face him repeatedly, knowing what he wanted from her. She was braver than I could ever be. After collecting 4 recordings, we had enough to prove a pattern, but we still didn't know who to trust with the information. That's when I remembered Ms. Rodriguez, my freshman year English teacher. She'd always seemed genuinely concerned about her students, and I'd heard she had reported a coach once for inappropriate behavior toward female students. If anyone would know what to do, it might be her. I approached Ms. Rodriguez after class one day and asked if we could talk privately. She must have seen the desperation on my face because she immediately agreed. In her classroom, with the door closed but the window uncovered, smart teacher move, I explained the situation without naming names at first. I told her about a theoretical student being blackmailed by a staff member and asked what the right course of action would be. She listened carefully, her expression growing more concerned. Jordan, this doesn't sound theoretical. Is someone in trouble? I hesitated, then nodded. I have recordings, I said, pulling out my phone. 4 of them. Ms. Rodriguez's face hardened as she listened to the first recording. She stopped it halfway through. I've heard enough. Who is this? Richard, the janitor. And he's blackmailing my friend Sally. The look that crossed Ms. Rodriguez's face was a mix of anger and determination. This is completely unacceptable. We need to take this to the authorities, not the school administration. She explained that in cases like this, going directly to the police was better than getting the school involved first. Schools sometimes prioritize their reputation over student safety. Ms. Rodriguez offered to go with us to make a report, and even said she'd help Sally with her home situation if needed. For the first time in weeks, I felt like we might actually have a chance at stopping Richard. But when I told Sally about Ms. Rodriguez, she panicked. No police. My mom will find out. She'll kill me, Jordan. I'm not exaggerating. I tried to explain Ms. Rodriguez's plan, how she'd help with both situations, but Sally was adamant. I can handle Richard a little longer. I can't handle my mom if she finds out I've been talking about our family to outsiders. We were back to square one, or so I thought. The next day, Tyler Jenkins, a senior on the wrestling team, cornered me in the hallway. Hey, I heard you and Sally talking in the library yesterday, he said in a low voice. About the janitor. My heart dropped. Had he heard everything? Was he going to tell Richard? Tyler must have seen the panic on my face because he quickly added, I want to help. Turns out Tyler had a younger sister who Richard had been extra friendly with recently. Nothing had happened yet, but Tyler had noticed the pattern. The same pattern that had started with Sally. His sister was a freshman, struggling to fit in, and Richard had been giving her special attention, offering her a safe space in his closet to get away from bullies. I'm not letting that happen to my sister, Tyler said firmly. Suddenly we had an ally, a senior, a wrestler, someone with friends and influence, and most importantly, someone else who knew what Richard was doing. Tyler brought in his friend Marcus, who was the editor of the school newspaper. Marcus couldn't publish anything about Richard directly. That would be libelous without proof, but he knew how to investigate. He also knew how to spread information strategically. Our group grew to 5 when Lisa Chen, a quiet junior who worked in the front office as an aide, overheard Marcus and Tyler talking. Lisa had her own story about Richard making her uncomfortable last year, touching her shoulder too long while complimenting her work hanging up decorations. Nothing she could prove, just a feeling that something wasn't right. But now it fit the pattern. We formed an unofficial task force, Operation Takedown Richard, as Tyler jokingly called it. Each person had a role. I was the coordinator since I had the most direct connection to Sally. Tyler was our muscle in case things got dangerous. Marcus handled information gathering and spreading strategic rumors. Not lies, but selective truths that would make people watch Richard more closely. Lisa used her position in the office to track Richard's movements and access his schedule, and Sally continued to record her interactions with him, building our evidence. We discovered Richard had been working at the school for 15 years, far longer than any of us realized. Through careful conversations with alumni who returned to visit, Marcus learned there had been rumors about Richard and female students for years, but nothing had ever been proven. Several former students described similar patterns of him finding vulnerable girls and offering them special help. It made me sick to think about how long this had been going on. How many Sallys had there been before? How many girls had suffered because no one connected the dots? Our plan evolved over several weeks. We needed to catch Richard in a way that couldn't be denied or covered up by the school. Audio recordings were good, but we needed something more concrete, and we needed to ensure Sally's home situation wouldn't be exposed in the process. The opportunity came in late October, about a month into our operation. The annual Halloween dance was coming up, and Richard always volunteered to help with setup and cleanup. Lisa discovered he'd requested access to the school the entire weekend for deep cleaning after the dance. That meant he'd have the building mostly to himself on Sunday. Marcus came up with the idea to set up a sting operation. Sally would agree to meet Richard on Sunday, supposedly to finally give him what he wanted. We would set up hidden cameras borrowed from Marcus's dad's security company. Tyler and I would be hiding nearby to intervene if necessary. It was dangerous and probably illegal in some way, but we were desperate teenagers trying to stop a predator. Sally was terrified, but determined. I'm tired of being afraid, she said when we finalized the plan. I'm tired of him thinking he owns me. The day before the operation, I was a nervous wreck. What if something went wrong? What if Richard hurt Sally before we could intervene? What if we got caught trespassing at school? The what-ifs were endless. I almost backed out. Almost told Sally we needed to just go to the police despite her fears. But then I saw Richard in the hallway, watching a group of freshman girls walk by, and the look on his face made my decision clear. This had to end, one way or another. Saturday night after the dance, we put our plan in motion. Marcus's dad was out of town, so we borrowed 3 small security cameras without permission. Lisa had made a copy of the janitorial staff key during her office aid period. Tyler picked the perfect hiding spots for the cameras in the janitor's office, one on a shelf behind some cleaning supplies, one disguised as a vent near the ceiling, and one inside an empty box of latex gloves. We worked quickly, knowing we only had about 20 minutes between when the dance ended and when Richard would arrive to start cleaning. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. When we heard footsteps in the hallway, we ducked out the back exit, barely making it out before Richard turned the corner. Phase 1 complete. Now came the hard part. Sunday morning, Sally texted me that she'd confirmed the meeting with Richard for 2 p.m. I picked her up at noon, and we went through the plan one more time. She would wear a wire, actually just my phone hidden in her pocket again. She would lead the conversation to get Richard to admit what he'd been doing. She would not, under any circumstances, actually let him touch her. If he tried, she would use the code word homework, and Tyler and I would burst in. We arrived at the school at 1:30. The building was eerily quiet on a Sunday. Using Lisa's key, we let ourselves in through a side entrance. Tyler and I took our positions in a supply closet near the janitor's office, leaving the door cracked open just enough to see and hear. Sally went alone to meet Richard. Richard arrived precisely at 2 p.m. From our hiding spot, we could hear their conversation clearly. "I was starting to think you were avoiding me," Richard said, his voice friendly in a way that now seemed sinister. "No, just been busy with school stuff," Sally replied, her voice remarkably steady. Their footsteps moved toward the janitor's office. The door closed. Tyler and I looked at each other, tense and ready. Through the crack in our door, we could see into the small window of Richard's office. The cameras were recording everything. The conversation started innocuously enough. Richard asked about school, about teachers, about how Sally was doing. Then it turned. "So, you ready to start paying me back for all my help?" he asked, his voice suddenly different. "What exactly do you want from me?" Sally asked, clearly trying to get him to be explicit for the recording. And explicit he was. He laid out in disgusting detail what he expected from her, what he'd been dreaming about since 9th grade. He reminded her of how he'd protected her, fed her, kept her safe from her mother. He talked about the other girls before her who had been grateful for his help. I felt sick listening to him. Tyler's hands were clenched into fists so tight his knuckles were white. Then Richard moved toward Sally. "Let's start with a kiss," he said. "I have a lot of homework today," Sally said loudly. Our code word. That was all we needed. Tyler burst through the door first, with me right behind him. Richard's face went from confusion to anger in an instant. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, backing away from Sally. "It's over, Richard," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "We have everything on camera. We have recordings of every meeting for the last month. We know about the other girls." For a moment, I thought he might attack us. He was an adult man facing 2 teenage boys, and despite Tyler's wrestling prowess, Richard had at least 50 pounds on him. But then Richard's expression changed to something calculating. "No one will believe you," he said calmly. "It's the word of 3 troubled teens against a staff member who's worked here for 15 years. You really think anyone will take your side?" "They will when they see the videos," Sally said, finding her voice. She moved to stand between Tyler and me. "And when they hear the tapes. And when the other girls start coming forward?" Richard's face went pale. "What other girls?" "We've been talking to people," I said. "Former students. Current students. You've been doing this for years, Richard. Did you think no one would ever connect the dots?" For a brief, terrifying moment, Richard looked like he might lunge at us. But then his shoulders slumped. "You're bluffing," he said. But he didn't sound convinced. That's when Marcus appeared in the doorway, right on schedule. He'd been waiting outside for our signal. Tyler had texted him when we entered the janitor's office. Marcus held up his video camera. "Not bluffing. And I've got the last few minutes on video too, just as backup." The plan had worked almost perfectly, but we hadn't anticipated what happened next. Richard suddenly bolted toward the door, shoving past Marcus with surprising speed. He ran down the hallway toward the exit. Tyler took off after him while I stayed with Sally. We heard a crash, then shouting. When we reached them, Tyler had Richard pinned on the ground near the school's front entrance. A decorative Halloween display had been knocked over in the struggle. Fake spiderwebs and plastic pumpkins scattered across the floor. "Call the police," Tyler grunted, struggling to hold Richard down. Marcus was already on it, using the main office phone to dial 911. "Student reporting an emergency at Westlake High School," he said clearly. "We've apprehended a staff member who has been sexually harassing and attempting to assault students. We need police immediately." The next few hours were a blur. Police arrived within minutes. We showed them the recordings and explained what had been happening. Officers took statements from each of us separately. They confiscated our cameras as evidence. One female officer took Sally aside for a private conversation that lasted nearly an hour. I was terrified that Sally's home situation would come to light, that everything we'd done to protect her would backfire. But Sally later told me she'd only disclosed what was necessary about Richard, keeping her home life out of it for now. The officer had given Sally her card, telling her to call any time if she needed help with anything else. It seemed the officer had read between the lines but wasn't pushing. The story exploded across the school the following day. Richard had been arrested on multiple charges. The principal called an emergency assembly to address the situation, his face grim as he assured students that the administration had no knowledge of this behavior. No one believed him, of course. Teachers looked shell-shocked, especially the ones who had worked with Richard for years. Other girls started coming forward. Not many at first, just 2 former students who contacted the police after seeing the news. But it was enough to confirm the pattern. Richard had been preying on vulnerable girls for over a decade, hiding behind his reputation as the friendly, helpful janitor who everyone loved. The consequences rippled outward. The principal was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into how this could have happened under his watch. The school board launched a review of hiring and supervision practices. Parents demanded answers at a heated community meeting. Through it all, Sally remained remarkably calm. When rumors inevitably started about her being one of Richard's girls, she held her head high. Her newfound confidence surprised even me. It was like taking down her tormentor had unleashed something inside her, a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Our little group stayed tight through the chaos. Marcus published a carefully worded article in the school paper about student advocacy and speaking truth to power, without directly mentioning our involvement. The principal's temporary replacement had forbidden any specific coverage of the case. Lisa continued gathering information from the office, keeping us updated on the official response and investigation. Tyler started a sort of informal support network for students who had experienced harassment but were afraid to report it. And me? I stuck close to Sally, bringing her lunch every day, walking her to classes, making sure no one gave her trouble about the Richard situation. We became inseparable. My feelings for her grew stronger, but I kept them to myself. She had been through enough without having to deal with my teenage crush. She needed a friend more than anything else. About 3 weeks after the arrest, Sally surprised me by bringing her own lunch to school. 2 sandwiches, in fact. She handed one to me. My aunt's staying with us for a while, she explained when I looked confused. My mom's been better with her around. They've been cooking actual meals. It turned out that the chaos with Richard had indirectly led to positive changes. After seeing how close Sally had come to being victimized again, her Aunt Barbara had insisted on staying with them. She'd confronted Sally's mother about her treatment of Sally, and for once, her mother actually seemed to be listening. The therapy sessions had just begun, and there were no miraculous overnight changes. But it was a start. Sally started coming to school every day. Her grades improved. She even joined the photography club after Marcus noticed her taking pictures during lunch one day and encouraged her to check it out. Slowly but surely, she was building a normal teenage life. The preliminary hearing for Richard's case was scheduled for December. The prosecutor warned us that we would all likely need to testify eventually, but for now, our statements and the recordings were enough to keep him in custody without bail. He'd been fired from the school, of course, and his picture had been in the local paper. His life as he knew it was effectively over. I should have felt triumphant. We had taken down a predator, potentially saved other girls from becoming his victims, and helped Sally escape his clutches. But instead, I felt hollow. What had happened to Sally, both with Richard and at home, should never have been possible. How many adults had failed to notice or act? How many systems had broken down to allow these abuses to continue? One afternoon in early December, Sally and I were sitting in the local coffee shop working on homework. She looked up suddenly and said, "Thank you for everything." I don't think I ever properly said that. "You don't need to thank me," I replied, embarrassed. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly. "They wouldn't. Most people didn't even notice me until all this happened. You saw me. You helped me. You believed me." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and went back to my biology notes, trying to ignore the warmth spreading through my chest at her words. A week later, Sally met Jeff Williams in photography club. He was a senior, tall and artistic, with an easy smile and genuine interest in Sally's photography. Before I knew it, they were spending time together, heads bent over photo prints or camera settings. I tried not to feel jealous when I saw them laughing together in the hallway or sitting close during lunch. Jeff was a good guy. I knew that. He treated Sally with respect and seemed to genuinely care about her ideas and opinions. He was patient when she was quiet and never pushed when she wasn't ready to share something. He was, in many ways, exactly what she needed after everything she'd been through. Still, watching them grow closer was harder than I expected. I had spent months protecting Sally, caring for her, being her rock during the worst time in her life. And now that things were finally getting better, someone else was there to share in her happiness. The irrational part of me felt like I was being replaced, even though I knew that wasn't fair or true. One Friday in mid-December, Sally bounced up to me before first period, more animated than I'd ever seen her. "Jeff asked me to the winter formal," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "My first real dance. My aunt is taking me shopping for a dress this weekend." I forced a smile. "That's great, Sal. You deserve to have some fun." She studied my face for a moment, her expression turning thoughtful. "You're coming too, right? We could all go as a group. You, me, Jeff, and maybe you could ask someone?" The thought of spending the evening watching Sally and Jeff slow dance made my stomach twist. But how could I say no to her when she looked so happy? "Yeah, maybe," I said noncommittally. As the dance approached, Sally's transformation continued. She gained a healthy amount of weight. She got a new haircut that framed her face perfectly. She started wearing colors instead of just black and gray. She smiled more easily and laughed more freely. Seeing her blossom was amazing, even if it hurt that I wasn't the reason for her happiness. I decided not to go to the dance. I told Sally I had a family thing that weekend, which wasn't completely a lie. My cousin was visiting from out of state, but I could have skipped out on the family dinner if I'd really wanted to. The truth was, I just couldn't handle watching Sally slow dance with Jeff all night while I stood awkwardly by the punch bowl trying to look like I was having a good time. The Monday after the dance, Sally cornered me at my locker before first period. She was practically glowing, wearing this blue sweater that made her eyes pop. It was weird seeing her so normal, like a regular teenage girl excited about a dance instead of someone who'd been through hell. "Why didn't you come?" she demanded, crossing her arms. "And don't say family stuff. Tyler said he saw your cousin's Instagram and you guys were done with dinner by 8. Busted." I should have known Tyler would somehow catch me in the lie. "I just didn't feel like going," I mumbled, rearranging the books in my locker like they were suddenly the most interesting things in the world. "You've been weird ever since Jeff asked me to the dance," she said, her voice softening. "Are you mad at me or something?" I slammed my locker shut harder than I meant to, making Sally jump. "I'm not mad at you. I could never be mad at you. The words got stuck in my throat. "Just what?" she pressed. The bell rang, saving me from having to answer. "We're gonna be late," I said, already backing away toward my first class. "Talk later, okay?" I spent the next week avoiding any one-on-one time with Sally. It wasn't hard since she was spending most of her free time with Jeff anyway. I told myself I was giving them space, but really, I was being a coward. I couldn't bring myself to tell her how I felt because I was afraid of ruining our friendship, and I couldn't pretend everything was normal because it hurt too much. During this time, we got word that Richard had taken a plea deal. He'd serve at least 5 years and have to register as an offender afterward. It meant none of us would have to testify in court, which was a huge relief for Sally. The principal wasn't coming back either. The investigation had uncovered that he'd ignored previous complaints about Richard. The school board quietly asked for his resignation. In January, things with Sally's mom took an unexpected turn. Her aunt announced she was moving in permanently, and that Sally's mom was getting help for her issues, which was adult speak for rehab or therapy or something. Sally didn't share all the details, but she seemed cautiously hopeful about the changes at home. My aunt actually signed the permission slip for the spring photography trip, Sally told me one day when we were paired up for a chemistry lab. It was the longest conversation we'd had in weeks. Mom would never have done that before. That's awesome, I said, genuinely happy for her despite the awkwardness between us. The overnight trip to the state park? She nodded, carefully measuring out some blue liquid into a beaker. Jeff's going too. He's been helping me practice landscape shots on the weekends. Of course he was. I focused on reading the lab instructions, trying not to show how much that stung. Jordan, Sally said suddenly, putting down her pencil. What happened to us? We used to talk all the time, and now you barely look at me. I kept my eyes on the paper. Nothing happened. We're good. Bullshit, she whispered, glancing around to make sure our teacher hadn't heard. You've been avoiding me for a month. Did I do something wrong? The genuine hurt in her voice made me finally look up. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm dealing with some stuff. What stuff? Maybe I could help. That's what friends do, right? Friends. The word felt like a punch to the gut. Before I could stop myself, I blurted out, I like you, okay? Not as a friend. And watching you with Jeff is killing me. But I'm trying really hard to be happy for you because you deserve to be happy after everything you've been through. Her eyes widened, and for a horrifying moment, I thought she might laugh or get angry. Instead, she just looked sad. Oh, that single syllable told me everything I needed to know. She didn't feel the same way. I nodded and went back to the lab, my face burning with embarrassment. We finished the experiment in silence, communicating only when absolutely necessary. When the bell rang, I bolted for the door, but Sally caught up to me in the hallway. Jordan, wait. I stopped, keeping my eyes fixed on the floor. I had no idea you felt that way, she said quietly. It's fine, I said, even though it definitely wasn't. Really, you don't have to say anything. I know you're with Jeff and he's a good guy. He is, she agreed. But that doesn't mean I don't care about you. You're important to me, Jordan. More than you know. I finally looked at her. Just not in that way. She hesitated, which was answer enough. I need you in my life, she said, as my friend. Can we still be that, please? What was I supposed to say? No, I can't be your friend because I want more, after everything we'd been through together? So I nodded and forced a smile. Yeah, of course we can. The rest of winter crawled by. I joined the baseball team again when spring training started, which gave me a legitimate reason to be busy after school. Sally and I still talked, but there was a new carefulness between us, like we were both afraid of saying the wrong thing. It sucked, but it was better than not having her in my life at all. In March, something unexpected happened. Lisa, who was still working in the office, overheard a conversation between the new principal and the school counselor. Apparently, a freshman girl had come forward saying a teacher had been making her uncomfortable. The teacher? Mr. Peterson, the gym teacher who'd always given me the creeps. They're actually investigating it, Lisa told our group at lunch. We still met up occasionally. Me, Sally, Tyler, Marcus, and Lisa, though less frequently than during the Richard situation. Like taking it seriously from the beginning. That's because of what happened with Richard, Marcus said. The school can't risk another scandal. It's more than that, Sally said. I think we showed people they can speak up and be believed. That they don't have to deal with this stuff alone. I looked at her across the table, struck by how different she seemed from the skinny, silent girl I'd first noticed in 9th grade. She caught my eye and smiled. A real smile without any awkwardness. And something shifted between us. Maybe we could actually be normal friends again. The photography trip came and went in late April. Sally returned with amazing photos and stories about hiking at dawn to catch the perfect light. She didn't mention Jeff much, which I appreciated. Instead, she talked about techniques she'd learned and ideas for her portfolio. Her passion for photography had become something real, not just a club she'd joined on a whim. In early May, Sally showed up at my house on a Saturday morning, which hadn't happened in months. My mom let her in, looking surprised but pleased to see her. They'd always gotten along well. What's up? I asked when she appeared in my doorway. I was still in my pajamas, hair sticking up in every direction. Jeff and I broke up, she said without preamble. I sat up straight, trying to process this. What? Why? I thought things were good. She shrugged, coming to sit on the edge of my bed like she used to before everything got complicated. They were. He's great. But I realized something on the photography trip. What's that? I asked, my heart suddenly racing. That I wasn't being fair to him. Or to myself. She picked at a loose thread on my comforter. He wants to go to art school in California after graduation. I don't know what I want yet, but I know I'm not ready for that kind of serious relationship. Oh, I said, not sure how to respond. Are you okay? Yeah, actually. It was mutual. We're still going to be friends. She looked up at me. But that's not really why I came over. No? Number I came because I miss you. Like the real you and me. Before things got weird. I swallowed hard. I miss that too. Good, she said, smiling. Because there's a baseball game next weekend, and I was thinking I might come watch. If that's okay with you. It was more than okay. It was the first step back to normal. Or whatever our new normal would be. I didn't ask if her showing up after breaking up with Jeff meant anything. I didn't want to push or assume. For now, having her back in my life as a real friend was enough. The rest of the school year flew by. Our little group started hanging out regularly again. Tyler got accepted to state on a wrestling scholarship. Marcus won a journalism award for his coverage of student activism, his carefully coded way of writing about what we'd done. Lisa decided to study criminal justice after discovering she had a talent for investigation. Sally continued to thrive. Her photography got selected for the district art show. Her aunt officially became her legal guardian, with her mom's consent. She started talking about maybe applying to community college to study visual arts. Small steps toward a normal life. As for me, I was just trying to figure out who I was outside of the Richard situation and my feelings for Sally. Baseball helped. So did starting to look at colleges. I discovered I was actually pretty good at statistics and thought maybe I'd study sports management or something. The last day of junior year, Sally and I walked home together like we used to. The summer stretched before us, full of possibilities. I never thanked you properly, she said as we reached the corner where we usually parted ways. For what? I asked, squinting at her in the bright June sunshine, for seeing me when no one else did, for bringing me lunch all those days, for believing me about Richard, for helping me take him down, for not abandoning me when things got bad, for, she trailed off, then took a deep breath, for loving me enough to let me figure out who I am, even when it hurt you. I felt my face get hot. You don't have to thank me for any of that. I know, but I wanted to. She stepped closer and hugged me, her arms wrapping tight around my waist. I hugged her back, breathing in the familiar smell of her strawberry shampoo. When she pulled away, she looked up at me with a small smile. I'm not ready for anything right now. I'm still figuring out who I am when I'm not terrified all the time. But someday, when I am ready, well, I hope you'll still be around. My heart did a weird flippy thing in my chest. I'm not going anywhere, I promised. She nodded, seeming satisfied with that answer. Good, because I've got 2 tickets to the summer concert series at the park. First one's next Friday. You in? Definitely, I said, unable to stop the grin spreading across my face. We stood there for a moment longer, just looking at each other. Then Sally shouldered her backpack and started walking toward her aunt's house. See you Friday, she called over her shoulder. I watched her go, realizing something important. Whether or not Sally and I ever became more than friends didn't actually matter. What mattered was that we'd saved each other in different ways. She was safe now. She was happy. And somehow, against all odds, we'd taken down a predator and changed things at our school for the better. I headed home, already looking forward to Friday. Whatever happened between me and Sally in the future, friendship, relationship, or something in between, I was just grateful she was in my life. And for now, that was more than enough.